Okay, in this video I'm going to show you the basics of my new method or my new system called body type fitted mesh. The um, the theory behind this is that instead of just having one fitted mesh that only fits about 80% of the different body types and body shapes of avatars that are out there, it is to first create a fitted mesh in the traditional way that fits the standard default avatar shape, and then rig it as fitted mesh, adjust the weights so that it moves nicely and it changes size nicely, and then to use the auto mesh resizer, which is down here, to resize the mesh into three possible body types. And one is a waif, that waifs generally have very small breasts, are not quite as curvy, are very thin. Hourglass, this is for female. Hourglass is what you think of a woman with an hourglass figure, which is probably what most female avatars are in Second Life, is what I would call an hourglass. Larger breasts, small waist, curvier hips, and a slightly, and a larger rear end or derriere. And then we have voluptuous, and voluptuous are the breasts are as big as they can be, a very small waist, and very curvy hips, and the largest derriere or butt that you can have. That's voluptuous. The theory is that you use this basically the same weights from the standard fitted mesh that you already created when you were creating the process of rigging your mesh clothing to fit the default avatar shape. And so you'll have already done that process. So you're basically going to use the same weights for all three body types, but that each of these body types will fit those avatars that are closer to that type of body type better, so that you'll get a better fitting fitted mesh, which is still adjustable because not everybody's going to have the same exact measurements, but women who or female avatars who have, like, say, an hourglass body type, that avatar or that mesh for that particular body type will probably fit them a lot better, even if they have slightly bigger breasts or slightly smaller breasts or a little bit wider hips or narrower hips. So let's see. So that's the theory, and I've tried it and it really works. And the other benefit too is that, like on the voluptuous, where the breasts are the very largest, the texture tends to distort around the breast area because they're becoming much bigger. Well, if you make these different body types of fitted mesh, you'll be able to relax the UVs in world space so that you can get rid of much, if not all, of that distortion. You won't be able to get rid of all of the stretching, but you'll be able to get it to where it looks a lot nicer than if you only had one standard fitted mesh that was being stretched to, say, the voluptuous shape. So okay, so let's get started. So the first thing you're going to do is, you have your mesh clothing, and here's my mesh clothing, and I'm going to activate MayaStar. I'm going to do this really fast because I've already covered this in other videos. So I'm activating MayaStar, and that brings the avatar in, and I've already had a texture on my mesh clothing, as you can see. And I always like working with the larger meter scale avatar, so I'm going to make the avatar the meter scale, which is much bigger, and you can see the feet are there. And then I'm going to make my mesh clothing 100 times bigger, so I'm going to go into the scale mode. Again, make sure that your pivot is down at the very center of the grid, and then you just simply change the scale to 100. 100, 100, 100, and that will move as it scales up the mesh clothing to fit the avatar perfectly, because the avatar is 100 times bigger. This is actually the size of the avatar in Second Life. Okay, and some of this poke through you're seeing here is simply because the avatar is so big, and there's such little space between the mesh clothing and the avatar itself that sometimes the camera has a hard time knowing exactly what is on top of what. But you can see there's really no poke through. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to switch, because we're going to do, we're going to come here to avatars for weight transferring, and I'm going to tear it off. And I'm going to switch to the fitted mesh female shape. And if I open up the appearance editor, you know, and make, say, let's go to torso and make the breasts bigger, you can see that the mesh clothing is not rigged yet. So I'm going to click on mesh default, which just resets this. And so now I am going to select the mesh clothing for, let's see. I'm going to select the avatar mesh first, and then hold the shift key down and select the mesh clothing. You can do that in the outliner as well. Now here's the avatar mesh, and then here's the dress up here. Hold down the control key. And then I'm going to come here to substitute geometry. Make sure I use a setting of 0.0010 and go substitute geometry. And it's going to substitute the geometry of the dress for the geometry of the avatar, but it's going to keep the original skin cluster that has all the weighting information. And now if I make her breasts bigger, you can see it gets bigger. You know, if we were to come here and do, let's tear this off, female walk, and hit the pause play button, you can see that it's fully rigged. Okay, and I'm going to go back to the bind pose. Okay, so it's fully rigged. And I'm going to go to mesh default shape again. And so now I'm going to do a quick adjustment of the breasts. I'm not going to do the adjustment of the skirt because it's just a demonstration. So I'm going to come here. Well, let's turn on our avatar so we can kind of see better what's going on. Okay, so we're going to select the mesh clothing. We're going to go to paint skin weights tool, and we're going to go to left and right pec, and we're going to make the breast size the biggest it can be. And like I said, I've already covered this in other videos, so I'm just doing it really, really quick. Flood, flood. I did it twice. Do the right side. Flood, flood. Okay, I already did that. And I've already showed you in the other videos that if you want to use other tools such as Sculpt Geometry tool, or if you actually want to move the vertices, say you had just a little bit of poke through and you just wanted to move a vertice to get rid of the poke through. Right now, because we use substitute geometry, this is what happens. See, it goes kind of crazy. You can't move it. Even if you just want to grab it just a little bit, see, it goes too far out. So that's because we use substitute geometry. What we want to do now is, if you do want to use move some vertices around, or use the Sculpt Geometry tool, you have to, let's go back to the mesh default shape. You have to detach with your mesh clothing selected, detach history, or skin with history. This gets rid of a node that is created when you created the Sculpt Geometry, when you use the, not Sculpt Geometry, when you use the substitute geometry. It created a node, and that node interferes with moving the vertices. Now, the mesh clothing seemed to disappear. It didn't really disappear. It just shrunk back down to a scale of 1, 1, and 1 because the avatar itself, or because the mesh avatar that we used to use substitute geometry was at a scale of 1, 1, and 1. So all you have to do to get it back is just select the top, scale X, hold down the shift key, click on the bottom, scale Z, enter 100, and hit enter. And then it's back. But this is not rigged. Now we detached the skin with history, so it's not rigged, but we still have the skin cluster, which has all of the weighting information on it, so that even though it's not rigged anymore, it still has the information. It's just not rigged to any skeleton. So we'll go back to the default shape. Okay, so now we want to re-rig. So it's really super simple. With your mesh clothing selected, click the collision bone select, normal bone select, because there is all the bones in the skin cluster for the avatar for weight transferring for both fitted mesh and female fitted mesh has all the bones in them. So we had to select both the collision bones and normal bones select. So it's just clicking that one, and then going smooth bind. Make sure you have selected joints, closest distance, or newer versions of Maya use. I will usually recommend classic linear method. I use a maximum influence of 3. I turn off, do not use maintain max influence. Do not have remove unused influences selected. You don't want that to be selected. I use a drop off rate of 7. You can play with that. And I use colorized skeleton. Some of these don't matter, like the 7 and the 3, because it's going to use the information that's in the skin cluster anyway. But I would leave these, especially, I'd always just use the same max influence. The max influences means how many bones each vertice can be influenced by. So if you had 4, that means each vertice can potentially be influenced to up to 4 bones. This says each one can be influenced to a maximum of 3 bones each, which is, I find out works better. 4 tends to get a little too complicated. 3 works just fine. You do not want maintain max influences because that means you can't get rid of all the influence of a particular bone. So say there's a bone in the breast area that has some influence on it, say it's the collarbone, you know, and you don't want it to have the influence by that. You wouldn't be able to get rid of it completely if you had maintained max influences on. So okay, so then you just click bind skin. Oh, this is a very good thing that happened, and it happened before in the other video, is that it's saying that, you know, it's bound at a different position, at a different bind pose position. Really easy to fix. All you do is you click on go to bind pose, and then you select your mesh clothing again, collision bone select, normal bone select. We already have the bind skin options open, and just click bind skin, and that time it went through just fine. And now we can see that our, I'll move this out of the way, you can see that our breasts are now back to the way they were. This distortion that you're seeing here with these like lines and stuff, that's not really there. That's just a thing, a kind of a glitch that Maya puts in there. It's not really there. Pay no attention to the person behind the curtain, sort of thing. Wizard of Oz reference for anybody who didn't get it. I'm sure you guys all did. Anyway, okay, so we've adjusted the weights, and say we wanted to look at the different body types, and we have an hourglass here, and say you wanted to use the sculpt geometry tool to get rid of some of this poke through, but say you were pretty happy with the way it moved and the way overall it changed shape. All you have to do is you can come to the sculpt geometry tool, set it to pull, and set it to the normal, and then you just kind of pull it. It'll follow the normals. I showed this in the other video too. Okay, that's how you can get through some poke through very easy. Okay, so now we're going to make, now that we've made our standard fitted mesh avatar, or not avatar, mesh clothing, we're going to make the ones for the body type fitted mesh from it. And you can see that overall, you know, Hourglass, it does pretty good. It starts to fail on the voluptuous. You see the hips start to come out too much. Now, if you hid that with an alpha, um, you might be perfectly happy with that shape. You know, you might be perfectly happy. Let me turn off the. You know, you might be very happy with that particular shape. You know, but the area around the breasts might be too stretched out. The texture. You can kind of see some of it right here. I think I can fix this glitch here in just a second. So, so what you want to do is you want to, we're going to detach with history again, the mesh clothing. And we're going, because you have to detach with history, otherwise the auto mesh resizing won't work. It will interfere. Having it rigged will interfere when it tries to make changes. So what you do is really simple. Like I said, you just simply detach skin with history, and it, like I said, still maintains the skin cluster and all that kind of stuff. And then what you want to do is you want to, in MayaStar, with your mesh clothing selected, come in here to MayaStar, Auto Mesh Resizing, activate Auto Mesh Resizing. Now, because we use substitute geometry, it will create two wraps. So if you were using, instead of substitute geometry, say you like the copy skin weight or the copy weights better than the substitute geometry. I tend to find that I have a much better luck, much less cleanup with substitute geometry, but for some people they might like a different way. They may copy the weights and use a different method of getting the weights copied from the fitted mesh avatar meshes, or from the standard non-fitted mesh avatars that are weighted to the M bones. So if you were using any other method other than substitute geometry, at this point all you'd have to do is click create. But because we use the substitute geometry, and the substitute geometry still has a node to the old geometry, it will create two wraps at once, and we don't want to create two wraps at once. So we're going to do this slightly manually. You want to deselect everything, select your mesh clothing first, hold down the shift key, and select the avatar mesh, because that's the white avatar mesh, and that's this one over here. Because this is the one, this avatar mesh here that's all white, is actually going to be the deformer. How it changes shape is it will force the dress to change shape. And so I always use face. Volume works really good on newer versions of Maya, but all these numbers can be changed afterwards, so you can play with them. But I would start off with volume, or with an older version of Maya, I'd use face, and then you simply click create. Okay, and it created a wrap, and now what I normally do is, say I come here to Hourglass, and it reshapes it to an hourglass shape. Now it's not rigged, remember. This is the auto mesh resizing that's changing the shape of it. See, it's not rigged. This is not grayed out over here. So say I want to make this a little bit smoother. It's a little jaggedy. So all I have to do is select the avatar mesh and change this to 5. Okay, and it made things a lot smoother. So say you're happy with that, you know, and you go, okay, I'm happy with this. what you can do now, you can do it before, you can do it after, it doesn't matter. I'm going to relax the UVs. Um, Actually, why don't we do it on, I'm going to do it on voluptuous. I'm going to click voluptuous, and you see we get quite a bit of stretching here. Actually, no, let's do it on hourglass. Okay, so what you want to do is in your UV texture editor, is open your UV texture editor and go into UV mode and select all the UVs. Come here to polygons, come down here to relax and click the options. You want to make sure pin UV borders is on. You want to make sure world space is on, and I always put mine to a maximum iterations of 100. And then all you have to do is click relax. Now I'm going to move this out of the way, and so that we can see what happens a bit better. So you click relax, and you see the texture changed, and we got rid of all those weird lines that I told you was not really there. So now if we go to voluptuous, so we don't get those lines. We get some poke through, but we don't get those weird distortions. But we do still see some distortions on the breast because, you know, it is being stretched larger. Like I said, we can compensate. We still have the UVs selected. I'm going to move this out of the way so we have a little bit more room. Okay, we still have the UV selected, and we still have the same options that we had before. And if we click relax, boom. Notice how the texture is not nearly as distorted. Here, I'll Control Z. That was the original. And now we'll relax. Boom. Much less distortion. Okay. Okay, so now what you want to do, yeah, my kitty, I don't know if you can hear her, she wants attention. So now let's go back to hourglass. Okay, so we have our hourglass, and I'm just going to really quickly relax, and there we relaxed it for the hourglass. Don't need that open. Okay, and now what we want to do is we need to duplicate this shape so that it stays. So you just hit edit, duplicate, and I change this to dress hourglass, and then hit enter. Now what I want to do is I'm going to hide the original. Remember, the original dress that was there, the geometry was substituted that geometry of the dress for the avatar mesh, and so that's why the dress is now named female avatar mesh. So I'm just going to hide that so that all we see is the duplicate. Okay, so we have just the duplicate. See, if we make the duplicate, if we hide the duplicate, everything goes away. Okay. Or there's no other dress. It's just the duplicate. Okay, now the duplicate isn't rigged. As you can see, it has no skin weights on it or anything. You know, you can even delete history if you want to. You could freeze transformation if you wanted to at this point, or not. Just depends on what your preference is. If you freeze transformation and export it out as a size, it'll come in Second Life the correct size instead of those little tiny mesh that we were all very familiar with when we bring it in. You know, so you won't have to change the scale in the upload window. You can just bring it in. Some newer versions of Maya and Collada exporters will automatically change it from centimeter scale to meter scale. So if it comes in normal for you at a scale of 1, 1, and 1, when it's tiny, you would want to put this to not to have it as a scale at 100. yeah, you'd want to like freeze transformation. You don't have to freeze transformation, but it's just up to you. So anyway, so okay, so we have our mesh and it's been reshaped and there's very little poke through. At this point, yeah, you do not want to move any of the vertices at this point, because what we're going to do now is we're going to copy the weights from the original to here. So first we need to do a quick rigging of the duplicate, you know, of the hourglass dress, the duplicate, and go collision bone select, normal bone select. Oh, I almost made a mistake. We need to rig it, but we need to rig it to the skeleton in this position. When we made it into an hourglass shape, it moved the skeleton and changed the joints. It changed some of the scales of the joints to get to that shape. So what we need to do is you can either do it under animation and poses, custom bind pose, or you can come down here to the skin weights tools, custom bind pose, and you just click create bind pose. Now that reset the skeleton, so now this is the default skeleton settings. And so so now you select your mesh dress, you click collision bone select, normal bone select, smooth bind skin, and now but you'll notice, you know, these are just the default weights. So if you were to make the breast size bigger, it would look horrible because the weights are not correct. You know, let me go to you know, the weights are not correct. So we're going to go back to hourglass, and even though the original mesh dress is hidden, you know, even though it's hidden, you can still copy the weights from it. And even though the original mesh dress that is now named female fitted mesh, because we did the substitute geometry, even though it's hidden, you can still transfer the weights over to it. And even though it's not rigged, it has, because it has a skin cluster. We're just taking the information of the skin cluster and moving it. So you select the female fitted mesh, or if you had used a copy skin weights instead of substitute geometry, you would select your mesh dress, the original one, and then you would hold down the control key and select the duplicate, and then you would come in here to MayaStar, skin weights tools, copy skin weights. Make sure use smooth skin weights copy is turned off, and you go copy. Okay, and now our new duplicate, oh, wrong one. Our duplicate changes size correctly. You see what I mean? So that it is fitted mesh, and it will fit a variety of size of breasts, and we can even show the texture, so that it will fit a variety of shapes, and it will follow the actual mesh avatar's body a lot closer. Okay. Now you can do the same thing for the voluptuous, and you can do the same thing for the waif, and that way those different shapes, like if we do it for the voluptuous, I'm going to hide this one, and I'm going to show the original, and now I'm going to do the voluptuous body type. So we come here to the voluptuous body type. You know, as you can see, it's not poking through on the hips or anything. And now on the voluptuous, I wouldn't use, you can do the initial size by of getting most of the settings by clicking voluptuous. But I find that even though we copy the skin weights over, it doesn't quite, the breasts don't get smaller better. They kind of come saggy. So what I would suggest that you do before you make your duplicate is come over here to torso and change the breast size to the hourglass setting, which the hourglass setting for breast size is, I believe it's 60. Let me look on, I have it written down. Breast size hourglass is 60, I believe. Yeah, 60. Okay, so now what I want to do, so I'm going to, even though the breast size says it's 100, because the breast size for voluptuous is 100. I'm going to change this down to 60. Okay, and this is what I would use. And then, so instead of the breast size of 100, and then what you do is you make your duplicate. I'm just going to hold down the control key and hit D, which is the shortcut for creating a duplicate. I'm going to rename the duplicate mesh dress how do you spell voluptuous? I can never remember. It's one of those weird words. Okay, oh yeah, I had a pretty good Voluptuous. Okay, there's 2 U's in voluptuous, or 3 really, but you have this UOUS. And so, okay, so we renamed the dress. Again, I'm going to hide the original, just so that it's not in our way. Okay, and then I'm going to take our duplicate, and you see here, and I'm going to rig it. So I need to go to custom bind pose, create custom bind pose, select the mesh avatar, the mesh clothing, the duplicate, and tear that off so it stays open. Collision bone select, normal bone select, smooth bind skin, and there we go. Okay, but we still have the old, we have the default weights. We want to copy the weights over. So you go female fitted mesh, because remember that's the original. Hold down the control key, select the voluptuous dress, and there's 2 places you can get to copy skin weights. I mean, you can get through copy skin weights through the regular menu up here, under animation, under the skin menu, or you can get it with the, there's also copy skin weights here, and then you just click copy. Okay, and now it's been copied, and now if we go to the voluptuous, the breasts will get bigger, just like they're supposed to. And now is the time that you would want to, in your UV texture editor, go into UV mode, select all the UVs. And I'm not going to go through the settings again. All I could do is click relax. Okay, and so it relaxed the UVs for the larger shape, for the voluptuous shape. And now basically the dress is ready to export. Like I said, you can come in here, and we got a little bit of poke through. Like I said, most of this, all this would be covered by an alpha. But if you wanted to come in here and move some vertices around, say you didn't want it to go quite so in, you can smooth this out, or you can, because now that we've got the weights from the original, we can now move the vertices around. You do not want to move the vertices around until after you copy the weights from the original, because it's going to rely on that the vertices are exactly on top of each other in order to copy the weights accurately. And so, okay, so say you want to get rid of some of this. This is, again, this is where you come in here and you do your paint skin weights. Oh, not paint skin weights. I'm sorry. You want to come in here to the sculpt geometry tool. And where I have it set to pull on the normals, these are the settings that I have. Oh, and I almost forgot. You can't do it. Well, you should be able to do it while it's rigged. It must be because there is... It's because it's still... Because we copied... When you copy the skin weights, it actually creates a link from the original to the duplicate. And so in order to get rid of... that connection, we would have to do what we did before, which is delete skin with history. And Maya's deciding it's going to take a minute. Okay, let's undo. Okay, so what we want to do is come in here and detach skin with history, and the brush should pop down smaller, which is to be expected because we rigged it. The bind pose, it was at a smaller brush size. So let's go back to the bind pose. Oh, wait a minute, why isn't this going back down? Let's see, we gotta go to the brush size of 60. There we go. Okay. And now if we rig it, because we deleted with history, we shouldn't have a problem now. So collision bone select, normal bone select, smooth bind skin, and remember, we deleted with history, it kept the okay, so now when we come here and come here to sculpt geometry tool, and we come here to pull, now it's working. There's no delay. So now we can sculpt to get rid of those little poke throughs. If you really wanted to. Like I said, this would be covered by an alpha. And you can come out here and, you know, so it doesn't kind of go so much into the place between the cheeks. You know, and yet it will still, you know, because we detached with history, it kept the skin cluster, which has all the weighting information. So that's how you do this. Now this dress is basically ready. Like I said, I didn't adjust the weighting of the dress itself that you have to do in between here. That's for another video that I'm going to be making next. But this gives you how you're going to do the different sizes. So as you can see, how this will fit avatars that are very, very large, you know, voluptuous, and those types of body shapes. It'll fit it better than if you had just trying to have one size or one shape of mesh fit all. And like I said, you also get rid of the distortions, and it just overall, I think it's going to look a lot better. So we have two, and I won't do the waif. I won't do the waif because I just showed you how to do two. The waif is the same basic setup. This is the sagging problem that I talked about earlier. Down here is that it's really meant for not hourglass shapes, but for very voluptuous shapes with the largest rear ends as possible. But it's still, you can still change the size. I'm sorry, the buttocks area. So the butt size is 100. So this fits very well between, like, say 80 or 75 to 100 size butts. While the and I'm going to hide. I'm going to hide this one, and I'm going to show the hourglass. See, while the hourglass, you get a lot more pork though. Like I said, if you're happy with the hourglass and you're happy with the shape and you're just going to cover it with an alpha anyway, all I would do is I would create a duplicate and of the hourglass, just like we did before, and then I would rig it, you know, to copy the weights from the one hourglass. Like I said, say you're happy. This is what I would do. Say you're happy with the hourglass, that it fits the shapes that you want it to fit, you know. So say you're happy with this particular shape and you like the way it moves and everything, and you don't want to make a duplicate of the hourglass and go through all that, you know, because say you're very happy, say it looks very nice, you know, but you do want to make a duplicate and play with, but say you're, you know, not quite too happy with the texture stretching, you know, too much. Well, you'd go through the same process of creating a duplicate, copying the weights of the duplicate over, just like we did before, of the hourglass, and then you would simply, after you create the duplicate and named it voluptuous, you would just simply come here to the body type and click voluptuous, and then, because even though it's being reshaped by the bones, and then come in here, select the UVs and do relax using those same settings. See, it relaxed it so that there's less distortion, even though this is a hourglass shape, you know. And so if we go back to the hourglass shape, you know, the distortion doesn't look too bad there. You might say, okay, this is fine, I'm going to use just this one for both, you know. Or if you weren't quite happy with this one, you can relax the texture again, you know, on, so it's up to you. It's up to you what you want to do. And you could do the same thing with a waif if you wanted to. If you didn't actually want to make a waif shape and say you were happy with the way the waif looks, with just changing it with the fitted mesh, because this is fitted mesh changing. This is not changing shape using the wrap. This is the way it's rigged. So you're happy with that shape, but you don't want this to be distorted. So again, you would just click relax, and you see it's not distorted. And then you would create a duplicate of this, you know, like I say, you'd be creating duplicates from the hourglass shape and then copying the weights over, and then on the duplicate you would be relaxing the UVs, so that even though it's the same actual shape, if you're happy with this, you know, if you're happy with the way this changes and you don't want to do all those other things, at least with a relaxed UV texture, you know, using pin UV borders and world space, you can get rid of the texture distortions, and that I think would be a big benefit, even if you didn't want to have several different meshes that you'd still end up with several different meshes. You would simply have the same shape mesh, but the texture distorted for hourglass, voluptuous, and waif. And remember, you'll always have the original, so you can simply rename this original standard fitted mesh, you know, instead of, you know, that's what I would do. So let your customers have a choice. You know, they can either go with something that they realize is their body type, or they can go with the standard mesh, because some people may be very happy with standard fitted mesh. But the standard fitted mesh is going to probably have the most distortion of them all, since it's not going to be any of these shapes. You know, how many people walk around with the default shape? Not very many. Not once you've been in Second Life for very long. And like I said, I believe most people are an hourglass shape. And so, alrighty. Well, I think that explains. I think I've been on like for an hour or maybe more. So that is my, like I say, you do not have to use these methods. You do not have to make a body type fitted meshes, the different sizes. You could simply do the one, and then you could simply use the close this out. You could simply use these to simply check to see how well does it change shape. So these will still come in handy to see how things change shape, even if you don't make what I'm calling fitted, body mesh fitted, body type fitted mesh, or fitted mesh body types, or fitted mesh body type. I haven't quite figured out the name. I think it's going to be body type fitted mesh, and then your one that's rigged, the other one, the original from here, will just be called either standard fitted mesh or traditional fitted mesh. Probably standard fitted mesh would probably be a good name for that. So yeah, so that should do it. Like I said, stay tuned for my next video, where I am going to show you how to rig dresses and skirts, so I will be doing that in the next video, and we'll see you there.